And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang has the week off. He'll be back with us on Monday. If you're on hold and you want to weigh in on tipping, stay there. We're going to get to more calls in just a few minutes at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the Dean of the Sacramento Press Corps, who you can read in the pages of Cal Matters. You can also follow him on X at Dan Cal Matters. Dan Walters, welcome.
Hello. Yeah. Good morning.
Well, good afternoon to you. Well, hey, you could.
I was watching the Giants game on TV. I lost track of time.
Well, you could be on vacation in Hawaii talking to me from the beach. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I wish I was. Yeah, I'm not, unfortunately.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. All right, let's
Sure.
talk about the battle going on right now over redistricting, where the state of Texas, among other states, is exploring the idea of redrawing their congressional lines halfway through the decade. They say they're doing it because of all of the population changes that took place during COVID-19. Obviously, the political component of how many seats the Republicans would have versus how many seats they have now, how many they would have if they redraw the lines, certainly provides, I think, a net gain of 5 seats for the Republican Party, which in a very thinly divided House of Representatives could be the margin of victory that gives them the majority after the midterm elections. Well, Gavin Newsom, who sees himself as a national figure, said, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to redraw my congressional districts, and I'm going to give the Democrats 5 more seats here in California. The difference between the two states is that the process is different. In California, voters selected to have an independent commission draw the district lines. And if Gavin Newsom were to change that, the voters would have to sign on and say they changed their mind too. When you look at the calendar also of what that process would require, the California Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, came out recently and said, well, we're going to have to change some of the dates and change some of the rules to get this done if you win an election in November. And Newsom is going to have to figure out just exactly in the legislature how they're going to make that happen. But to my eye, and maybe you disagree, I don't know, this is far from a done deal for Gavin Newsom. First of all, they're going to have to figure out how to make the process work that works with the California Constitution and will withstand, I'm sure, legal challenges that Republicans will file. Kevin Kiley may be among them as soon as they decide to move forward with this. But also, if you look at the public polling, I've only seen one poll, it showed that Newsom's idea only has the support of 52% of Californians. And you say, okay, well, that's a majority. Typically, when you bring something to the ballot, you want it to be north of 60% because the no side hasn't started making their argument yet, and they haven't started buying time on radio and television and in your mailbox and everywhere else. This time around, Arnold Schwarzenegger said he's not going to sit this one out. He is going to be actively involved campaigning on the no side. Charlie Munger, who was the rich guy responsible for this in the first place, said he's going to open up his checkbook and he is going to write checks to the no side as well. So it'll be a well-funded opposition, and it'll have bold-faced names out there making the argument. What do you make of what Newsom is trying to do, and do you think, like me, it's not a done deal yet?
Well, I agree with you. It's not a done deal yet. We're talking about a constitutional amendment here. They're going to have to change the Constitution. People don't like to change the Constitution. Basically, they're kind of leery of this sort of thing. I think it can easily be and accurately described as a political ploy, a maneuver that you have to change the California Constitution for partisan political reasons. That's not going to set too well with an awful lot of people, particularly if, as you say, you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger out there making commercials and Charlie Munger writing big checks to put those commercials on the air or on the YouTube or wherever else they might pop up. So it's not a done deal. And it also faces some serious deadlines. They got to do this thing really fast if they're going to have it on the ballot in November. I mean, within days, really, according to the current law. Now, with that caveat, it's been known before that the legislature will change the deadline rules for ballot measures when it suits its purpose for a specific ballot measure. And I think that's almost certainly would have to happen in this case. But then you have to get, how do you draw these things? This is not a simple thing. Drawing a redistricting map for California is a very complicated business, starting with the fact that you do not have particularly accurate data on population. I mean, California's seen, a lot of things go on since 2020 when the last census was made. Basically, we've probably lost a little population. So there's that. But there's also changes. Some places have been growing, other places have not been. How do you account for that? How do you get the data to account for that? Or do you just take a shot in the dark and just kind of do a real crude sort of gerrymander that just basically shrinks the Republicans' districts or sticks them in some more voters in the Republican districts? Because theoretically, and this is where the courts would come in, these districts have to be equal in population. Otherwise, you violate federal law. You also have to take into account minority communities and all that stuff that's also covered by federal law. There would be ample opportunity, therefore, for the Trump administration's Department of Justice to inject itself into this thing by saying your new redistricting plan violates federal voting rights. This is not just a theoretical thing. This is what actually happened about 25 years ago after the 2000 census. The Democrats were in power in the legislature and the governorship at the time, Gary Davis, but they did not do a partisan gerrymander. Why? Because the George Bush Department of Justice was saying if you gerrymander California, you're going to have to deal with the Federal Department of Justice on Federal Voting Rights Act law. And so they could not gerrymander successfully, and they had to do a bipartisan gerrymander, in effect, that satisfied both Democrats and Republicans at the time. So this process of redistricting is not a simple process. It's an extremely complicated process that's subject to not only, in this case, a constitutional amendment, an election on a constitutional amendment, but also the possibility that the U.S. Department of Justice could step into this thing if your districts aren't equal in population. And then how do you prove they're equal in population? Because you don't have any data. You don't have any current census data to guarantee that they're equal in population. This thing is a real, as I said, redistricting is a very, very complicated process. Now, already some people who know how to do this are already working on it in the Capitol. People who have up-to-date data, at least as up-to-date as you have. But remember, all data at this point is really kind of speculative. There's nothing official about what the population of this city or that county is at this moment. It's all just an estimate made by the state, and that then it makes it susceptible to potential lawsuits. No, this is a very complicated project. It's not a done deal, and Gavin Newsom may or may not be able to pull this thing off. And if he doesn't pull it off, it's going to be egg in his face. I mean, he's now staked out this position as I'm going to save the Democratic Party by gerrymandering California, and maybe and then inferentially, and now you should elect me president of the United States. But if he doesn't pull it off, then then he kind of cedes that leadership position to perhaps someone else.
I've talked to some people who follow this pretty closely here in California, and their take is that there is two separate issues going on right now in terms of the shifting population patterns in California. One is we've lost a lot of people to other states. We will lose congressional districts and electoral votes the next time they do the census in 2030. The estimates are we're going to lose between 3 and 5 congressional seats and electoral votes. We won't know until we count the population in 2030. The other issue at play is that there has been changing patterns in population internally, where places like Los Angeles County are hemorrhaging their population. The Bay Area is experiencing the same thing. And areas like the Inland Empire, the Central Valley, Orange County are increasing their populations. Well, if you're going to redraw the congressional districts midway through, I would imagine if you do it accurately, you're going to have to dilute the power of Los Angeles County. You're going to have to dilute the power of the San Francisco Bay, and you're going to have to increase the number of seats in places like the Inland Empire, Central Valley, and Orange County.
Yeah, that's true. But then on what databases are you going to do this? And you're right, California is going to lose seats after the next census, not necessarily because it's lost population. Its population is really pretty static. It's that it hasn't gained population in relationship to other states. And that's why it's going to lose some congressional seats, rather, as you say, 3 to 5 congressional seats. But that's then. What do you do now? How do you do this? If you don't have provable data on which to do it, you're leaving yourself wide open to lawsuits, not only suits from the federal government, perhaps, but suits from people within the state who feel that they've been somehow disenfranchised by this plan. And this thing could be tied up in court for an awful long time.
What do you make of Gavin?
If he gets the voters to go for it,
What do you make of Gavin Newsom's schizophrenic presentation to the country? And I say that because not long ago he was breaking bread with Charlie Kirk and Michael Savage and Steve Bannon and others, and he was traveling to red parts of the state of California, and he wanted to present himself to the nation as the Democrat who can talk to MAGA USA and could make persuasive arguments that will bring at least some of them back in the tent. Now he's trying to portray himself as this partisan warrior that's willing to do whatever it takes for the Democratic Party to maintain their power or to regain the majority in the House of Representatives. He also has the public presentation of this whenever he's at a press conference or sitting down in an interview. He's this gentry class winemaker who is a white-collar kind of guy who uses very expensive words and regards himself as being a very thoughtful sort of person. Yet you look at his social media accounts, and his social media accounts are almost all universally bitchy, where he's out there looking to get involved in Twitter wars with God knows who, sometimes bold-faced names, sometimes some guy living in his mother's basement somewhere in Idaho. He's just looking for fights that'll go viral on the internet. Sometimes those fights look like they're extremely contrived, but he thinks that that will benefit him, I guess, as a national figure. I just don't see any consistency at all with what he's putting out there.
No, it is inconsistent, and you're right about the change thing. I think what happened is two things: the fires in L.A. and the immigration sweeps. And I think he realized that trying to be kind of palsy-walsy with the right-wing Twitterverse and that sort of thing wasn't going to work. He had to become then particularly on the immigration, he had to become the warrior, or he would lose credibility within the party. He had to do that, and he had to he had to start dumping on Trump on the fires and the aid to LA and all this stuff, simply because events outstripped his strategy, the strategy for moderating himself, making him look more, like having a big tent sort of attitude. He realized that that's not going to fly in the Democratic Party, and you've got to go to the warrior thing. You got to strap it on and go to the war, or he just won't take it serious. He was getting a lot of heat for that all those podcast things he was going on. Joe Rogan and all those things, and I think he finally said, no, this ain't going to be it. This is not work. I've got to go to war, and so he did. And now he has to deliver on going to war, like this thing on redistricting, so that he can say, hey, I'm the guy who took on Trump and shoved it down his throat and stopped him from keeping his majority in the House and all this stuff. I mean, it's a high stakes game. If he stumbles on this thing, if he didn't make it, I think it's going to be a big blow to whatever ambitions he has to run in 2020. And he also has to do something else. Suddenly, Kamala Harris is back in the game, and that's going to be a whole nother episode. Is she going to run for president again against Gavin Newsom? I mean, come on, this thing could get real interesting along the way.
I've got a prediction for you. I think Gavin Newsom's social media accounts are going to get him in big trouble at some point. And I don't think it's him that's running them. I think he has teenagers in the office that are running them. And they're trying to say and do provocative things that generate attention. And Gavin likes attention, provided it's not negative attention. So far, they haven't gotten him in trouble. But I think it's a matter of time. And I know at least one instance. We had Alex Michelson from Fox 11 on yesterday, and he said that he was interviewing Gavin and asked him about one of those provocative tweets that came out under Gavin Newsom's name, and it was clear Gavin Newsom had no clue that tweet went out. I think that's going to get him in trouble.
Well, it could, although he's the word in the governor is that he wants this thing. He wants to be provocative. He wants to have all this instant reaction to everything that's going on in the world. And use coarse language, shall we say, and whatever it takes to get that noticed. So yeah, it might backfire on him, but he really can't claim the innocence in that because he's told these kids or whoever they are to go to town.
If you were to get a couple of drinks in Jerry Brown right now and ask him, what do you think about Gavin's performance? What do you think Jerry Brown would say?
If he was, I think he would be quite critical, actually. I think, the funny thing is that in some ways, Gavin Newsom is just essentially cloning Jerry Brown 1.0 back in the 70s, where it was do anything to get attention, because I want to be president of the United States, and I'll just go do all this stuff and do all this symbolic stuff. And he's big, although he's 20 years older, 20 plus years older than Jerry was at that time. Nevertheless, his governorship, in many ways, has been a clone of Jerry Brown's first governorship, which Jerry Brown now recognizes was a total disaster. He ran for president twice during that governorship. He got rejected by the voters when he tried to go to the Senate, and he ran again for governor in 2010, and essentially to boost up, his legacy. Otherwise, he was going to go into the books as a failed politician, Governor Moonbeam, and he came back to try to say, "Hey, I've learned my lesson. I'm mature. I'll take care of business. I'll be engaged." But yeah, I think he's seeing Gavin Newsom make, in some ways, all the mistakes that he made during his first governorship.
Dan Walters, you can read him in the pages of Cal Matters and follow him on X at Dan Cal Matters. Dan Walters, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure.
You bet. All right. Bye-bye.
It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. If you'd like to download the podcast edition of this program, that's easy to do. All you have to do is subscribe on your handy-dandy iPhone, and you can listen anywhere, on the exercise bike, on the airplane, on the cruise ship, whenever and wherever you want to. All right, many of you want to weigh in on the topic of tipping. Has tipping gotten out of control? I think so. Earlier today, I was asked to tip a robot. That ain't happening. What say you? At 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Your calls up next, right here on The John Phillips Show. It's The John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Coming up after the news at 2, we're going to check in with Dave Berg, who is the producer of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He's going to weigh in on CBS, giving Stephen Colbert the pink slip. Right now, we're taking your calls at 800-222-5222. Has tipping in the United States officially gone too far? Let's begin with Sam in Los Angeles. Sam, hello.
Hey, what's going on, John? How you doing?
Good.
Okay. Hey, look, I got several stories. One of them really I'm peed off about that. Jim Romey, the sports guy. Some years ago, he had on his show, John. He made a statement about if you can't afford to leave a decent tip, go to a fast food or drive-through restaurant. Who in the heck are you, Romy, to tell somebody where to eat at? And it's like what you said, John. Tipping is out of control. It's almost like they hold you hostage. Is it like guilt tipping? The only obligation you have, John, is to pay the bill. Tipping is just something you do. I don't know if it's a moral thing or whatever, but you don't have to tip if you don't want to. And I heard you said about the nephew about for his cross country team. That's ridiculous, So what do you think about that? What do you think? Well, where does Romy get off saying something like, if you can't afford to leave a decent tip, go eat your fast food? What do you think about that, John?
Well, tipping is something that's going to vary based on your experience. If you had a good experience, you'll probably leave a good tip. If you had a bad experience, you'll probably leave a bad tip. That's the way it works. Mm-hmm. There are people who feel like they're entitled to a good tip regardless of what kind of service they provide. And that, to me, is outrageous. Now, I have no problem tipping generously to a bartender, to a server, because they are providing a service for me. And if it's a place where I'm a regular, you rely on them to take care of you. If it's busy, they find you a table. If the bar is crowded, they make sure that they get your order and you don't get ignored. Sometimes happy hour lasts a little bit longer and starts a little bit earlier. They take care of you, you take care of them. It's a give and a take relationship. But
you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, huh?
Exactly. But my example at the airport, when you're at the Hudson Books waiting for your flight, you buy a newspaper and a candy bar, and you had to go find the newspaper, you had to go find the candy bar, you had to go wait in line. You're paying for these items at the cashier's desk. Why should you tip the cashier? What did the cashier do for you?
Right. And another thing, John, when I was in high school, me and a buddy man, we talked every day, and he worked at a shoe shine parlor for tips, back then. This is like back in 63 and 62. Okay, but his name is Don. I always tell him about you because I listen to you every day. I say, Don, look, you get a job, you or anybody, if you have a job where if you're depending on tips, you're in for a rude awakening. Well, I depend on tips to pay my cell phone or whatever like that. Everybody's not going to tip the way you think they should tip. Some people may not tip at all. So to me, I tell them, I say, man, I'm sick of hearing this here. I tell them, do one or two things. Get you a better job or get you a second job to go along with the one you're making tips with. You agree with that, John?
Yeah, if they're not tipping them, maybe it's time to find something else to do. Or maybe put a smile on your face. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Chris in Long Beach. Chris, hello.
Hi. I am a bartender and have been one since college. And people like to tip. I mean, people are very generous. I'm not sure where all this tipping backlash has come from. And servers never really were complaining about a higher minimum wage. I mean, that was the politicians doing that. So thank you all for your tips. And again, the one lady mentioned the taxes on tips or not reporting your tips, which is ridiculous. I mean, as MAGA as I am, don't report your tips. And then when you go to apply for an apartment or a car loan and it says you're making $20,000 when you're really making $43,000, see how that works out. And then if you're not reporting your tips, you're going to qualify for CalFresh and Medi-Cal? You could go to jail for that. And you were only required to report 8% of your charge tips, and then the cash tips you're on your own. So I don't know where all this anti-tipping crazy is coming.
Here's a question for you, because I kind of look at tipping the same way I look at the dogs, the service dogs. There was a period of time where blind people were the ones that had the service dogs because we needed the dogs to make sure they didn't wander into traffic and get run over by a truck. And then everyone decided that they were going to have a service dog and bring their dog with them on the airplane and bring their dog with them into the restaurants and the grocery stores and everywhere else. And now everyone just kind of assumes that anyone with a service dog is a scam artist. To me, bartenders and waiters and people who cut hair for a living, those are professions that are entitled to a tip, provided they provide good service. And I have no problem tipping very generously in those instances. However, the umbrella just seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of professions that are expecting a tip, like the cashier at the Hudson Books at the airport, or like the computer that I gave my donation to earlier today, where it's not even a human being and it still asks for a tip. I wonder if people are dialing back on the tips for those industries where they're expected and deserved, because they're being asked for tips all over the place where it shouldn't be expected or deserved.
I mean, that's possible, but also, like you said, like cashiers, and again, as a bartender, sometimes we have to do the to-go orders, and I mean, you have to pack it up, put it together. I mean, I'm not whining, but we do get tips on takeout orders, and there is a little work that goes along with that, and it kind of takes away from your service to others. But frankly, I've never gotten a complaint about. I've gotten very generous tips on doing takeout, and the Starbucks, they used to have a cup at the drive-through window. They no longer do, I guess, because of security or safety. But I mean, if I got my coffee and grilled cheese quick, why not throw $1 in? You know. So.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir.
I just want to say it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for the call. And also, when you're tipping your bartenders or your waiters and waitresses, it's not just the service that they provide in terms of bringing it to you or making your drinks. You're also paying them for their knowledge. You ask the bartender, hey, I like this type of booze. You don't have it in stock. What's similar to it that you think I might like? Or I like this drink, but I'm not in the mood for it today. What's something similar to it do you think I might like? People ask waiters and waitresses and bartenders those kinds of questions all the time. And if they're a good bartender, if they're a good waiter, they have answers to those questions and they can help you have a great experience, and that's worth something. Let's go to Linda in Pasadena. Linda, hello.
Hi, John. I'm in my late 70s, and this dates back to the late 60s when I was pledging a sorority at Cal State LA. And we had been to an event, and for brunch we went to a fast food restaurant. I don't remember which one. And so the service was poor. We were all African Americans. We all spoke standard English, and our server wasn't. She was African American, and she gave us poor service. She probably thought we were all, middle class, rich kids, and none of us were. But we all spoke standard English. Well, the service was so poor that at the end we decided we would give her pennies for a tip. And we gathered them all together, and I wrote a little note, your service would be a lot better. Your tip would be a lot better if your service was better. And then we immediately left. We were cracking up in the parking lot, and she came outside, bawled us out, cussed us out. I never forgot it.
I gave you effing great service. How dare you?
Yep. So I tip, but I kind of resent now that when you pay with a credit card that they jack you up some more. So, I would rather pay cash.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to living and working in a cash economy. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Mike in Vallejo. Mike, hello.
Johnny, how you doing, buddy? First of all, kudos for yesterday, brother. You had your A game on. You didn't need any callers. You were on it. Dissected it. You were all over it, brother. I got to hand it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the tipping goes, I want to just point, look, as a kid that grew up with nothing, one of my very first jobs in the summer was I was working the valet parking attendant in Fisherman's Wharf for the Grotto number 9. I can say it now because it's closed, so no one's going to get bothered by it. But Nino Giraldi would make sure that I was taken care of every damn night when I left. Not only that, but it was such a popular place. Celebrities, sports figures would come in, and they would always take care of me too. Okay. Fast forward, my son's 14 years old. I'm living in Vegas. You're a Vegas guy. You're an adult beverage guy. You've spoken to bartenders, as I have. My son was working at a place called the Coachman Inn at 14 years old, under the table, scrubbing pots and pans. I was dating one of the waitresses. At the time, that joint was owned by Bucky Buchanan and Chip Lightman. They were Bucky was a big mob lawyer, and Chip was a huge agent in Vegas on the Strip, Danny Gans, that type of thing. It would be very normal for all the judges and whatever celebrities happened to be in Vegas during that season to be in there on a Tuesday night when my son would be working, to the point where it was like this. My son would go to grab Steve Lawrence's plates, and he would say, "Hold on, Zante. Leave those there. Here's $100. Dance with my wife, Edie Gourmet, for a couple songs first, will you?" You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that's the type of experiences that change the way you look at the tipping, in my opinion. I like you, I'm probably generous to a fault, but there's something about when you see someone doing it, you see someone young and they're trying to get somewhere, or you see a good seasoned bartender that knows what they're doing, you just want to make sure you take care of them. And not only that, you can't – the return you get on it is more than a smile, because he remembers you the next time, and he appreciates it, especially in Vegas, because it is an international town. And when the Europeans come to town, a lot of those guys get snipped.
Oh, and those stories, the stories that you just told, last forever. If there's a celebrity who is a good tipper and you remember that, you'll never forget it. There was a restaurant that's no longer here, unfortunately, that was owned by Frank Sinatra's former bartender. And one of the daytime bartenders also worked as a bartender for Frank Sinatra. And they had stories. They had 1,000,001 different stories about what kind of tipper this guy was, and how there was a $100 bill for just about everyone in the joint whenever he would come in to have dinner, and everyone knew it, and everyone loved the guy for it. And Frank Sinatra just walked on water because of it. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. More of your calls coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. It's The John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Has tipping gone too far? At the top of the hour, Dave Berg joins us. He's the former producer of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He's going to weigh in on CBS, giving Stephen Colbert the old heave-ho. Let's begin with John in Burbank. John, hello.
Hi, John. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, tipping has gone way out of control. Monday I was at the Dodger game. I go to a lot of Dodger games, and in the loge level, there's a place where you can get your Dodger dogs and your fries and your soda. It's all self-serve. You load up your own little tray. Then when you go to check out to pay for it, the guy sitting in the chair who's scrolling on his phone is taking your payment. He turns the little payment thing around, and there's a thing there for tips, 20, 22, or 25%. He didn't do anything. I did all the work. Now the only tipping I do are cow tipping.
All right. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Now, as an Angel fan, I can tell you, they ask for tips at Angel Stadium too, but at least they grab your hot dog and they grab your beer and they hand it to you. I have seen what you just described at Dodger Stadium, and you're right. You do all the work, and there's just a guy sitting at the chair taking payment. Let's go to Gary in Vallejo. Gary, hello.
Hey, how you doing, John? Thanks for taking my call. First of all, let me say the famous California needs fixing. I'm from the very bankrupt and home of the world state's highest paid firefighters, Vallejo. But yeah, tipping has gotten out of control here. I agree with you on, it's a gratuity based upon service and, and the comfort level that waitresses put us under. I've got a girl that cuts my hair. She does a phenomenal job every time. I give her a $20 tip. I went out to Texas. I tipped the waitress. I think it was $25. She about fell over. I guess out in Texas where my daughter lives, a $3 tip is big. But, the demand for it, like the last caller said, they spin the little machine around and, want 18, 20, 25% tips. I don't mind paying a tip for the service, but, it's a gratuity, and I feel that if people are in that business, they pretty much know that, if they provide a good service, that's where they're going to make their cash gratuities at. You walk into a joint, man, the business is bum, the food is bad, or, and the worst thing that I hate is, like, if I go to a restaurant and everybody's ordering $60, $70 plates, and they come up to you and tell you ask for something extra, and they tell you, oh, that's going to be 50 cents. You know what? I don't even need to hear that. Just add it to the bill, and, when I get that kind of service, where they're that cheap or, that anal about it, the tip's probably going to go down. If they just let it ride, just give me everything I asked for, I don't mind paying at the end, and the tip will be good.
Well, if you're tipping $20 on a haircut in Texas, they're going to treat you like you're Jerry Jones.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I pay for the service. You walk into the Supercuts or Great Cuts, and they're just going to, they butcher my hair, they're going to get a $3 tip. But I have found someone that cuts it really well, and I don't mind paying the good tip for, my hair to be on spot. Because when my hair is not on spot, my whole mojo is out. You know what I mean?
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Ken in Studio City. Ken, hello.
Hey, John. Well, a couple of quick things. First of all, I agree 100% with everything that you've talked about. As a previous caller said, you have been on your A game this whole week. It's been great.
Thank you.
The tipping has been out of control. I think part of it, and I hate this, everything is blamed on COVID, but I think part of it is COVID. But the other part of it is credit cards. We used to tip with cash, and servers used to be able to pocket. Most of that was tax-free. If you were smart, you made a lot of tips. You had to put something on your taxes. But now that it's credit cards, it can't be kept off of the tax rolls. I order out food occasionally, and I pick it up. I don't use these delivery services. And I'm always met with somebody who just takes my order over the phone and hands me the food. I'm supposed to tip.
Yeah, no, that's outrageous. You're doing all the work. You shouldn't have to tip on that. I'm up against a hard break, but thank you for the kind words. Thank you for the compliments. We've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to more calls next hour after we check in with Dave Berg, the producer of The Tonight Show.